Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you again, although my part right now is really short because this is another guest speaker chat, a replay that I am sharing with you from an Instagram live that I had with Tressa of Tsinbikee Knits. This was such a lovely chat. Really, we talked quite a bit about Tressa's creativity and inspiration and how that ties to her roots as an Indigenous person of the area, and talking about nature and earth and her other hobbies and how it all ties together. So it was so much fun. And I think we also talked about Tressa has gone back to teaching now. So her designs have slowed down a little bit, but she's still designing. And so I'm really excited for you to listen into this conversation. I really hope that you love it and you find something valuable to take away from it. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to this month's featured designer chat. If you are new around here, you first time joining live with me, I am Jessica, the knitting pattern designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits and the facilitator behind the Design Circle. I'm a design coach, mostly on the business side, but I am so excited that today I have Tressa from Tsinbikee Knits joining me so we can chat all about her. If you're new to, I'm trying to remember how to add her. If you're new to the featured designer discussions, this is kind of an idea that stemmed from the Design Circle. Designers were really interested in hearing stories from other designers and knowing more about them. So the design chats, we learned more about design process and stuff about the designers, but also the life beyond designing. So hello, Tressa.
Hi.
So excited to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Did I say that right? Is it Tsinbikee?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I love that you provide the pronunciation on your Instagram profile. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, for those of you who haven't met Tressa, this is Tressa. Would you like to give any sort of introduction to yourself?
Sure. So I'm Tressa Weidenaar. I live in Gallup, New Mexico. My designer name is Tsinbikee, which is actually the Navajo word for wooden shoe, as my dad is Navajo and my mom is actually Dutch. So I grew up in this community, kind of really tied to my hometown, my culture here. So a lot of my design work actually does come from the inspiration of being a part of the Navajo culture. So and I am a teacher by trade. I actually am going back to the classroom next year. I teach mid-school. I taught 7th and 8th grade math for 9 years, and now I'm going back to 6th grade. So, and yeah, I don't, mostly what I am doing at this point in time. So.
Yeah, and have you done a little bit of teaching this summer, or have you been just getting together all of the stuff to start teaching?
Well, I did a summer school kind of thing, which was just kind of more of like a camp kind of thing with a group of mid-schoolers. So, which was super fun. I was exhausted, but it was good to kind of be back with the kids again. So, yeah, so that
Yeah.
was my.
How long has your break been? Like since the last time you taught?
It's been about 7 years. I quit because I gave birth to my first daughter, and it was extremely, like, I don't know, insane. I tried to keep teaching for a semester, and it was just too much for me. And
Mhm.
my son was born, and I just decided to stay home with them for a few years. And now my son is going to kindergarten, so both of them are in school now, and it felt like um, I I was ready to go back. So yeah, so this kind of hiatus, I guess, has given me a chance to kind of explore fiber art and knitting and designing. I learned how to weave the traditional Navajo style within that time frame too. So yeah, so it's really been kind of a cool opportunity for me to just kind of take time to do more of this sort of thing. And yeah, it just kind of clicked. Partly, I think, just from, being math minded, I think that really kind of connected well with all of the math that goes into knitting. And I just felt like it was an opportunity to just kind of be doing, I guess, using that knowledge and kind of incorporating that into something like this. So
Yes. Yes. Okay, I have like a million different ways I like things I could ask right now. So, um, first of all, I thought forever I was going to be a middle school math teacher. I ended up going to school for engineering. So, I have a little special heart for middle school math teachers. um, and I also totally get the math side. So like growing up, did you have a lot of creative hobbies? Did you feel like you're creative, or did you feel more math centered?
well, my parents actually did not have a TV in our home growing up. They, I think, never could afford one, but then later on it was kind of by choice. They just decided that it was something they didn't value.
Mhm.
Um, and so and we lived out, on the reservation for a lot of my life, just kind of in the middle of nowhere with nobody around really. And my mom was always trying to find things for us to do. So it was just me and my younger brother. And so she kept us busy with, all kinds of creative things that we could use. Specifically, like she helped us learn how to sew a quilt. And then, another year she got us crochet hooks and yarn, and got us into like cross stitching. I mean, she just introduced so many different, I guess, ways to keep our hands busy. And oftentimes she would, at night, especially during the winter, she would just read books to us, and we'd sit and work on our craft. And it's kind of frustrating because my brother was actually a lot better at most of the stuff than I was.
Of course.
And so he, I remember we were making blankets, and his was just perfectly like, the right width, and mine was like all over the place, and it did not look right. And so I think she kind of fostered that in us at a young age, just kind of giving us, I guess, the joy of creating and using our hands to make things. Um, and that kind of, I guess I didn't really get back into it until after I finished college. I kind of wanted something to do again. So my husband bought me a sewing machine, and I started sewing like crazy, just so like loving that. And then a friend of mine was having a baby, and her aunt like had us all knit a panel, and then she sewed it all together, and it like just sparked this like interest for knitting again. And I dove back into that. And then, of course, that led to, I've always wanted to learn how to weave, and that, couldn't ever find somebody to teach me. And eventually I found somebody, and I just really, got into that. in that. And I just feel like it's just kind of been, I have way too much to do. I've just like got caught up in things that are just a big giant mess, and I have too many things that I want to try. And I think it's, that those creative brains just have that tendency where we're just always like, I want to try this, and I want to try that. And there's so many things that kind of inspire me in a lot of ways. So yeah,
Yeah,
so that's kind
I
of
could
where.
totally relate. I my mom did some sewing, so she taught me how to sew, but she didn't know the other crafts. But I was interested in, I did latch hooking and cross stitch and knitting and tiny bit of crochet, and so I have all of the hobbies. A little bit of acrylic painting, and would love to get into weaving and spinning, but it's just like so many options, and the only one that I actually really focus on is the knitting anymore. So, um, um, so do you find like your designs, do you feel like they're related to your other hobbies and interests? Or like, are they connected at all for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially, I think, with Navajo weaving, there's so many, um, like designs that are symbolic of different things, or they're just, part of the pattern. And I've really drawn a lot from that in my design work. Just kind of seeing something that I thought, oh, that would look really cool as like a knitting pattern. And, I think that definitely kind of connects and bridges in that way. Um, and yeah, I think, there's just, it's inspiration just kind of comes from like anything you're working with. I mean, like even just like a piece of fabric I might be sewing with, there's something in that fabric that I think this really like would be super cool if it was, in this design that I'm, considering, like, um, yeah. So I feel like it's just kind of, it's kind of how it works for me. Like I'm doing something, or I see something, or I'm creating something, and then there's an idea, that kind of comes to me as I'm doing that, and it definitely varies. It could be, I'm walking around outside and I see something, or so it's just kind of a um, yeah, interesting, unique way that I'm sure most designers would say that. There's just like, oh, I have this really cool idea, because you see something that kind of like sparks something in you, and you can kind of run with it when you just kind of sit down and think through it for a while. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Did a podcast episode earlier this month, I think it was, about ways to find inspiration for designs. And my argument is that you can literally find it everywhere. you know, and like just in your home and outside, and just different textures and patterns. And there's so many different things to inspire
Right.
designs. Do you still do a lot of, or I shouldn't say still, do you do much weaving with the Navajo traditional weaving?
Yeah, I actually just finished a huge piece that I've never, like, I mean, I stick to like, like um 14 by 18 inches, the kind of that size. And a friend of mine actually requested a weaving that was 24 by 36 inches, which is 2 feet by 3 feet. And I'd never attempted that size before. And it took me 2.5 years. It was a huge endeavor, partly because, with weaving in the Navajo style, you can't adjust. Like once you set up your loom, you're stuck with that size. You can't stop weaving in the middle. And like, a lot of, weavers will, cut the warps, and you can't do that in Navajo weaving. So you have to make it, you hit the middle, and then you flip it over and reflect it across the middle. And if you don't hit the middle exactly right, then the rest of the weaving is messed up on the other side. And I had trouble getting that, to work. So I got stuck a few times. I'd pull it back out. There was just a adjustment that happened. And yeah, so I do try to get my hands on the loom every so often when I have the time to do that. So yeah, it's been a really wonderful journey.
Mm-hmm. Is that the one that you were just talking about, the 2 foot by 3 foot one? Is that the photo that you had sent me?
Right. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I don't think I can pull up photos when we're both on here, but I'll be posting it tomorrow. I could also just put it in my stories for those who are interested that are
Great.
watching.
Sure. Yeah.
So then with your children now, are they like interested in some of the different hobbies and also the Navajo traditions and things?
Yeah, my daughter is weaving. My dad made her a little loom when she was 3, and it was just a little peg loom. That she actually, I actually have her first. This is actually her first weaving.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And she did several of these, with this just the little peg loom, and kind of taught her the process of just over under. And then when she turned 5, my dad actually gave her a small little lap loom that she figured out, and now I have her on an upright that she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. She wants to learn how to put designs in instead of just doing stripes. So that's kind of been it's been fun to see her interest in that. And my mom taught her knitting, so she knows how to knit. And my son is not so much, he's a little more I think eventually he will be interested. But he's not as like coordinated as she is. She's very much an artist. She likes to draw and color, and she's got a lot of that already in her, and he doesn't have the same ability. So I think I'm trying to give him more time to just kind of develop his coordination and whatnot. So I'm definitely I'm sure I'll give him the opportunity at some point, but yeah, just trying to not be, I'm not forcing it on them, I'm just trying to
Yes.
guide them to show interest. So yeah.
Yeah. Does your brother still knit?
No, he does not. My brother, he's a nurse anesthetist, and just is so busy, and usually he likes to cook. That's kind of his outlet. He really likes to cook and do that sort of thing. So I've encouraged him. I've said, you should start knitting again. It's really great stress release, and he just hasn't really shown it.
Well, cooking's good too. Food's good.
Right.
Especially, I don't know the Navajo foods so well, but we grew up, I'm from Montana, really close to the Crow Nation. And so we had some of those different kinds of foods in school and stuff when they'd have different events. So
yeah, Navajo traditional foods are like corn, beans, squash, which is pretty much like what we can access in terms of growing things out here, because it's not easy to grow things in the Southwest. My husband's actually got corn growing this year, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's so fun. Do you grow a lot of food?
No, we do not. We do not have the space for it, and we don't have the water for it. It's really, if we lived up closer to the river, which is, north of us, where like a lot of farms are, there's a lot of irrigation available for that. But where I am, the groundwater is not, just always there. We have to be a little more conscious of that. So, yeah.
We've had a few comments coming in. Kat Sank said, "Good morning, Tressa." And someone said fry bread and mutton. Somebody else said same in Cherokee. Southeast. They are called Three Sisters foods.
Yep. You should grow them together.
Okay.
Like how, so they put the 3 together. So my grandma used to grow when I was growing up. My dad is from north of Gallup, about 20 minutes, and they always had a field, with usually like I would often see them growing watermelon and and that sort of thing too. So yeah, just kind of and then and of course I forgot to mention mutton and fry bread. I mean, that's kind of the
the ones that everybody thinks of first.
Right. Yeah. So those are also foods that we enjoy in our culture. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Um, so I guess I don't know exactly which direction I'm going with this, but like your kids, do they have a lot of exposure to the traditions still? And like, um, are they learning a lot about it, or in school,
Um,
or at home, or?
yeah, so like my dad grew up in the boarding school, and he unfortunately did not have a lot of opportunity to learn the traditional ways of the Navajo people,
Mhm.
um, which I think he does. I guess I regret that. You know, I think he was also you know, a child who was forced to not speak his language, and you know, and there was, I think, a lot of I think difficulty with, you know, when we were growing up, he had a hard time um, wanting to speak the language to us, because I think he was afraid that we wouldn't be able to um, you know, function well in school. I think, you know, and his for him education was such a big deal. Um, so my dad's first language is Navajo, and you know, he um, you know, grew up away from his family, and I think there's been kind of a disconnect in that sense. So then, of course, we didn't learn, you know, a lot of those things, which as I'm older, I'm starting to learn more. And you know, and of course, with school and stuff, you know, trying to there are, you know, there's effort to try and bring back some of those things within you know, different um, activities they might, you know, do at school, or you know, trips they might take, and yeah, I do try to get them, you know, show them different things, you know, around us, and talk about, you know, different things. And um so yeah, so I'm hopeful that, you know, they'll be able to kind of have a appreciation, you know, for some of those things. And I feel inadequate, of course, you know, because I wasn't raised with those things. So I'm a little hesitant to be, um, you know, teaching things that I might not know completely 100% about, you know, and those sorts of
Yeah,
things. And I think that's true, you know, for, you know, being mixed, you know, in my culture, that, you know, that always is tricky too, because of course, you know, identity issues myself of, you know, not feeling fully, you know, fully Navajo or fully, you know, Dutch or whatever. So yeah, so but you know, and then on the other end too, my mom actually exposed us to a lot of the Dutch culture that, you know, she was raised with, because my grandparents are from the Netherlands, and they brought a lot of those traditions with them when they came to the United States. So you know, I was able to kind of have a rich experience on both sides of my cultures. So yeah, so it's tricky. It's hard to, you know, um, hard to know, you know, what the right path is in terms of how my kids are being raised in this community. So, but yeah, it's I love being here. I love being, you know, and part of this um, part of my journey is trying to keep my kids here so they know who they are, you know, as Native people. And yeah, so
yeah,
it's a big can of worms, you know. If you were to start opening that, there's so much to say, and so many, you know, good and painful things that come from that. So
yes.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to summarize it in just one conversation.
Yeah. Um, so the Dutch side, have you been to the Netherlands?
I'm not. My mom really wants, I mean, she was hoping to take, you know, take me and take my brother at some point, and it just never worked out. Partly because I really am like terrified of sitting on an airplane, you know, for how I've never been overseas, because I really hate flying. Like it doesn't, the actual flight doesn't scare me. It's more like the idea of sitting in an airplane for like endless hours and not being able to like get off the plane. It just really gives me anxiety. So I'm trying to like build up to try and maybe someday go overseas. But yeah, I just don't love airplane, like even like 2 hour airplane rides. I just like hate getting stuck on a plane. So, but maybe someday.
Yeah, Totally real. I had to ask because I did visit the Netherlands last month. I went on a trip to Europe and
Okay.
I loved it. It was beautiful.
Yeah, my mom has family there still, that she keeps in touch with, and they're always like, just come over, you're welcome to stay with us, so we do have, we could go back and I'd love to go with her so I could see, the farm that my grandparents bought, that sort of thing. I heard so many stories growing up about that. And, they were there during World War II, and they had a, kitchen that had a rollaway floor and they could hide people, underneath that. And I don't know if the house is still there, but I would love to see, where they were. So
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we went to the UK, the Netherlands, France, and Italy, and the Netherlands were my favorite. But yeah, also the whole flying thing. I actually had a conversation with Tsinbikee Knits. She knitwear designer. She was headed to Hawaii the same time we were headed to Europe, and
okay.
we were exchanging anxiety stories basically. Like there is so much around all of it, travel and airplanes, and it's a very real thing. So we were kind of just discussing, like actually it's really helpful just to know that other people also deal with it and you're not
Right.
alone with it.
Yeah, my husband just got back from Israel, and on their way home, they were traveling. I mean, they had 36 hours of travel, to get like they're, transferring planes. It was, and I was just like, I don't know if I could do that. 36 hours of traveling, it just really gives me anxiety. So, yeah.
Yeah, my spouse, he isn't such a big fan of the planes, and he's like, I can go on Google Earth, I can do the 3D version, I can see all of this stuff without being around all the people and doing the plane. So, yep. Anyway, I had questions here. Let me see what else we could. Oh, I did want to talk about your hobbies not related to crafting, because I feel like those also probably relate to your designs and your background and everything as well. So, what else do you enjoy outside of yarn?
Well, I've been a runner since I was 12. My dad encouraged me to start cross country as a seventh grader, and probably was one of the best decisions that I made. In terms of I think the pleasure that I get from running and the joy that I get. So I never quit. I ran cross country for 4 years and track for 6 years, and then I just kind of kept it up, through college and have found that it's actually quite a great stress reliever for me. And it really, I guess, gives me the opportunity to kind of get away from people, get away. I do not run with music. I don't run with noise. I always have just, I go and I get away from things. And I think I just enjoy the peace that, I run on trails. I try not to run on roads. I don't, I try to get out away from all of that stuff. And I think that that really has just kind of kept me balanced in a lot of ways and kept me, from going crazy. So, and I don't know, I just, growing up, like I said, my parents didn't have TV, so there was a lot of outdoor time for us as kids. I feel like that was kind of our home. We were always outside. We were always, wandering and exploring. Some of the things that my brother and I did together, my mom is just like, she had no idea that we were like that far away from home, and we'd just be, like bored and we'd be like, let's go across the street and climb over on that huge mesa over there. And we did that, and just the two of us. And I think that just kind of really built that like love and passion for the outdoors in my heart. And then I started mountain biking when I was in my 20s, and did a lot of rock climbing, just kind of the outdoorsy kind of stuff. So I still mountain bike, here and there when I have the opportunity, and just really love, you know, how mountain biking can take you so far off, you know, out in trails and whatnot too. I don't rock climb much anymore. It's just kind of a lot to do. My kids are really interested in rock climbing, but we'll see if we can get that out, make that happen someday for them. So yeah, so I think, you know, a lot of what I like to do is revolves around just being outside and being, you know, in New Mexico, of course, it's such a open space place where, you know, you can get away from people and noise, and you know, 20 minutes you're out in the middle of nowhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that, you know, that really is a huge part of who I am, and just kind of just where I want to be. I lived in Philadelphia for a year, and it was a real struggle for me, you know, to be in a place where everything was paved and everything had, you know, a building on it, and there was like, you know, 2 trees on my whole block, you know, and I was just so, I mean, I of course I grew to love Philadelphia, loved the community I was in, but it was definitely tough for me to kind of not have that freedom to just kind of remove myself from, you know, from the city. And yeah, so I feel like that's also what keeps me here in this area, is just that I just love the beauty of the land around me. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I love in your design photos, like all your photos, the background in them. It's so pretty.
Right.
Do you feel like your designs are also nature related? I mean, like, I imagine a lot of the Navajo symbolisms and
Yeah,
things like that are also connected there as well.
right. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like a lot of colors, you know, are of course a big part of that, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
the sand that we have, and you know, just yeah, like blue, and you know, there's a lot of you know, this cowl that I just, this is actually the cowl I designed for Pom Pom magazine. You know, it's just so, there's these colors are just kind of the standard of the Southwest. I mean, the blue sky, the rocks, you know, the sagebrush color. I mean, it's just kind of, I feel like that really does, I'll be like, you know, and I don't have it with me, unfortunately, my Chanel shawl, which, you know,
Yeah.
you mentioned in the right, is actually still at a Verb for Keeping Warm. They, you know, they'll send it back to me someday. But I was running, and I was just kind of thinking through the design. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, you know, with the design. I was thinking through, you know, like I knew it had to be a shawl, and I was just kind of, and I feel like sometimes I get overwhelmed. So then I just went out and just kind of started running to just kind of clear my head. And I was looking down, and there were these rocks all over the place that were all different colors. And I started taking pictures of them, and then I sent them to, you know, to Verb for Keeping Warm. I sent them over there just to kind of give them an idea of things that I had in mind. And then they took those ideas and dyed up, you know, some yarn that I actually didn't know what they were going to send me. And then they sent it to me, and then it was just like, it just kind of came together, just kind of clicked. And like, all of a sudden I knew what I was going to do. And I was just kind of that. And it just kind of hit me of like, you know, that there is so much about my time outside that really gives me that like clarity. Like all of a sudden it was just like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. You know, kind of just from seeing something that just kind of hit me like, this is really amazing. I really want to do something with this. And yeah, so I think that often happens, you know, with just with that kind of situation. So
I love
yeah.
I love that. I always love like the stories behind the designs. Like the designs are always beautiful, but then there's so much more to them when you learn about the stories. And if you want to talk about, you had also mentioned that with that shawl, it also reminds you of your grandmother as well, which then
Right.
just adds another like sentimental piece to it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another part of, with design work, I think I saw Jen was on here. I don't know if she still is, but Jen, who, is native knitter, the two of us often, it's kind of funny because we both have kind of similar ideas with kind of, and we both, sometimes we name things that are so similar to each other because, so much of our design work is representing things of our culture. And so with that shawl, it was kind of like I was thinking through the name for it, and like for me, like, shawls are always kind of, you think of like, my grandma having a shawl wrapped around her, and then it also, I included crosses across it, which in weaving is called, the crosses that are representing Spider Woman, which is the deity that taught the Navajo people how to weave, so those crosses were kind of, in a way, like representing the weaving culture. And my great grandmother was a weaver. My grandma was a weaver, but she didn't really like carry it on. And so all these things just kind of connected and came together. And she was actually not doing well health wise. And eventually, as I was working on this design, she passed away. And I just felt like it was kind of a cool way to kind of honor her, through naming it after her. So in the, Navajo culture, Shanella is my paternal grandmother. And that is kind of where I, kind of came together with that name. So yeah.
I love it so much. This is not related to our current conversation, but somebody had said earlier, what's up with all yarn people liking to be far away from people? It is common trait. I don't know if it's a lot because it's like such a independent kind of, like it can be such an independent craft where we're, we come be on our own and do our own thing. And that's why it attracts so many folks, or I don't know exactly why, but
yeah, I think, knitting is a very solitary, craft. You can do it anywhere. You can, climb a mountain, take your knitting along, there's just so many, and it just allows your creativity to kind of be expressed in a way that, doesn't require being around tons of people. So like, I feel like knitters generally just kind of have, to kind of appreciate the solitude and appreciate the ability to just kind of work on something without a lot of noise if you don't need it. So
yes. Yes. Okay, do you want to talk about your design process? Like you kind of talked some about design inspiration in different ways it comes for you. Then what does it look like after that point?
So yeah, that's a good question. I'm very disorganized. I will fully admit that. I am not a person that is very regimented in how I do things. I'm very I don't like stick to the same thing every time. Like sometimes I'll be, sometimes it'll work for me and sometimes it won't. So, if I've got like, an idea and I swatch it and then it does not work for what I was hoping for, then I will, either like take that and like use it for something else or like set it aside and, think about where it could be used later on. So there's just kind of a like, I don't know, kind of a ordered chaos to how I do things, I guess. So, typically like what's happened in the past is, especially with design submissions, I will, get an idea for a design. And oftentimes I won't submit anything unless if I've got an idea already in my head, which is typically what I wait for. So if I see a design submission call and I look through the mood boards, I look through, the color scheme, and I think, oh, I've got this thing that I have that I can, submit that would fit into this. And then I kind of throw something together without really like knowing how it's going to work out. And then once I get the yarn, then I start kind of fussing with it and messing with it until it somehow works out. Like sometimes I'm shocked, like, how did this work? I don't know how this, um, and I've had trouble, you know, especially with just, you know, with sweaters, you know, where I start working on it. I think I have all the math worked out and I get done and it's like completely not right. I just actually sent in a design that's coming out later this fall to a company. And I actually had the whole sweater knit and I like, you know, like except for the sleeves, and I kept putting it back on and kept putting, and it just wasn't working for me. So I ripped the whole thing out, you know, just took all that work and just completely took it out and just redid the whole thing. And I have a current sweater where I think I'm going to do the same thing, you know, because I'm just not happy with how it's looking. And so, yeah, so I feel like the design process for me is like sometimes it's magical and it just happens and it comes together and it works exactly the way I want it to. And then sometimes it's just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, usually I'll, you know, like I said, I get an idea and I sometimes will sketch it out. Well, I guess I always do sketch it out, just kind of get a sketch for what I want it to look like. And then of course, make the swatches for it and just kind of, you know, I feel like the swatches is the hardest part for me because I just struggle with getting accurate measurements. Like I do everything the way I'm supposed to do it, you know, like if it's knit in the round, then I knit it in the round and make sure everything is, and then I'll measure it all out and then it doesn't work, you know? So I get kind of frustrated with that, you know, where it just seems like I really like worked hard to make sure I did all of this process correctly, and then it just doesn't happen the way I was hoping it to. And then adjust from there, of course. And then you know, after I knit my swatch, then I'll do all the math for whatever I'm working on and make sure I'm, you know, getting a feel for what size I want it to be, and then put it together, write the pattern, get it tech edited, and then test it and go from there. So, and I just really value the tech editing process because it kind of validates my work. Like, you know, once I get to that point, you know, my tech editor is pretty honest, you know, and points out things that don't work, and it kind of, you know, gives me the courage to publish and be proud of the work that I did. So yeah.
Tech editors are so valuable. Yes. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but basically they can completely, you know, deter, like they can catch so many things that just make the design so much better. And if you don't have a tech editor that's very thorough, then it can cause more issues down the line.
Right.
Because we're all humans and we can all make mistakes. And especially, you know, like if we're designing something for the first time and not as familiar with how all the specific numbers should be and things like that. It's so helpful to have somebody else looking it all over.
Yeah, it's very reassuring, you know, to have that extra step in there. And I work with Jessica Schwab. She's Wool Gather and Knits, or I forget what her handle is.
Yeah, I think
but yeah, so she's, you know, and she's very, very amazingly skilled at what she does, and I just so deeply appreciate, you know, her knowledge and her just willingness to kind of work through me on something if I'm not sure what I'm doing. So that's huge. You're finding a tech editor that can help you through the process too, which is really helpful for me. So yeah.
I don't think we really covered how you got started with designing. We talked about how you learned knitting, but I don't think we got into the actual beginning of designing.
Yeah. So I started knitting, I can't even remember how long ago now, like 15 years ago, I started picking it up again. And there's a craft sale here in Gallup that is a pretty big deal. You know, everybody wants to get in, and, you know, it's kind of this big kind of fun event for us, you know, to be able to attend this craft sale. And so I first started sewing things, and I would sell my sewed, items. And then I started knitting things, and of course, like I was always drawn in by like native motifs and just kind of the, um, if you walk around this community, you're going to see a lot of like shirts that have like, native design on it, and hats, and, just kind of that pride of like, this is who I am and this is what I like to wear. And so I started to kind of like play with design, just more out of interest to sell it. So I actually started to design my own hats, which I named the turquoise rose hat. I don't have one here right now, unfortunately. I think I sold it. And I like, so I started to play with this idea of designing. So I actually started just drawing out charts and just started to see if I could figure out how to fit it into a hat design. And that I got it to work. The first few times it was way too small, and then I adjusted got it to work bigger. And then I made a whole bunch of them, and sold out of them like in 2 hours when I went to this craft sale. And then I started to make headbands, because I was just like, headbands would be really cool to kind of have, just because in New Mexico, it's cold, but it's not like the Arctic cold. It's in the winter, we get snow, it gets cold, but headbands are really nice because it just keeps your ears warm, but you still have a vent on the top. So I started making headbands, and I love color work, so I just started adding in different ways of designing color work. And so then I had like 3 like headband designs and a hat design, and I was just curious about like publishing the design. And then Jen actually was contacted by Making Magazine to submit a design to them, and then I was just like, I want to do that too. It just really gave me this kind of boost to kind of start working on making patterns available. And so I actually sat down and started to write the pattern out, and just didn't really have a clue what I was doing, and just kind of took me forever. I wrote it and then I rewrote it, and it was just such a huge process that I didn't really understand. But then I got it test knitted, and like was getting successful test knit results, which was really exciting. And then my friend Rachel, I think I saw her on here, agreed to take pictures for me, and then like the pictures just kind of like gave me this like, oh my word, these pictures are amazing. And she just kind of was kind of the cherry on top, and all of a sudden I was just like super inspired to start doing this kind of crazy process of designing knitwear, which I never thought I would do. So yeah, so that I guess was the start of it. I just kind of got all of these things fell into place, and I just kind of enjoyed it, just kind of the process of it, and just kind of just took off from there.
Yeah,
So.
I love that. So were you and Jen close friends before you started designing?
We were. Jen actually was a student of mine. She was my in my Algebra 1 class when she was in 8th grade.
So fun.
Yeah, we're actually 10 years apart. So it's kind of funny because we're just we're kind of kindred spirits in a way, because we just enjoy and appreciate a lot of the same things. And we I don't know, it's been helpful to have her in my life, because we can kind of support each other, because I do not know of any other knitwear designers in Gallup, and I don't know of many in Albuquerque. I'm sure there are. Actually, I have connected with some people in Albuquerque, but not in terms of like the relationship I've had with Jen, and we go way back. She's been a close friend for quite a while. So we definitely are connected in a way that I'm not connected to most people, and we are pretty much in touch all the time, and just we're rolling things through our heads, and like throwing ideas at each other, and it just it's really fun to kind of have a person that can I guess relate to you on a level that most other people can't. And we're close enough that we see each other regularly. Her parents live you know, 30 minutes from Gallup. So she's regularly coming back to this area. So yeah, so it's definitely helpful that that she's there to kind of have conversations with about this sort of thing. So yeah.
That's so fun. And then is Rachel the person who, like, does she still take your photos?
She does. I
Yeah.
prefer her, but you know, she's actually going to be teaching next year too. And she's not doing regular photography anymore. So I have to keep begging her to keep doing it for me because I don't really know anybody else around here who does, you know, photography. And she's just so gifted. I don't know if she's still on here. But yeah, she just really, and she's actually done all my photos for Taproot. You know, I've had 2 designs in Taproot magazine now, and she's done all the photography for those, and just, you know, does such an incredible job. So I'm hoping that, you know, she'll be willing to, and of course my work is going to slow down, you know, just next year. I just think, you know, being a teacher and like having my family and just, you know, I think I probably won't be doing a lot of work that has deadlines anymore, just because it's too much to keep up with, and I don't want to overwhelm myself. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. Like earlier you mentioned the word balance. I think it's so important in every part of life.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. I love it. Okay, do you want to share some of your designs? Do you have some of your designs with you?
I do.
Well, and
Yeah.
actually, before that, I wanted to ask you, how would you describe your designs when you're talking to somebody else about what you create?
Probably, you know, I've tried to do a little of everything. Like you know, I started out with doing hats, and you know, and then I did headbands, and then I did some cowls, and then I really wanted to push myself to do things that were a little more complex. And then I ventured into shawls, and then eventually into sweaters. And the sweaters, of course, is the hardest part. I've actually got, I think, 3 coming out in the fall, which is crazy. And 2 in process right now that I'm kind of like, I gotta get these done. So yeah, I mean, I usually say, you know, color work is my preference. I really like to do color work, and I like to do, I don't know, I like bold color work, you know, that you can really see and that really pops out. So yeah, so I try to, that's usually how I'll describe my work, you know, is that's kind of what I enjoy doing. I've done some work without color work, you know, that has been fun. But I feel like the expression of my work can be best seen with color work. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, I definitely think of color when I think of your designs. So.
For sure.
All right, go ahead and share your designs.
Okay, so yeah, so this is the first design that I had published. This is the Desert Tracks hat that went into Taproot magazine. The inspiration was actually beetles. So when you go out back, you'll often see we call them stink bugs. They're black beetles that walk through the sand, and they leave all of these footprints behind. And that's kind of what this is just kind of this track, you know, that you see in the sand when you walk out behind where we are. These are the painted desert socks. You can see the little crosses right here, and and then I added the toe. This is actually my mother-in-law Grace. This is actually her sock I'm working. It's taking me ages to get it done because it's just, you know, I make one sock and I don't want to do the other one. So. And then this is the painted desert sweater that goes with that. So this is the yoke, and then the detail on the bottom and the sleeve. So this is a fingering weight sweater that I wear all the time. It's one of my favorite designs just because it's so versatile, and you can wear it over things. And then the blue water wrap, which has been a pretty popular design. This is all texture, so this is all one color. And this is with Farmer's Daughter fibers, which, yeah, this was actually it took forever to knit, and you know, stalled out a lot, but it's knit on the bias. So it's a 45-degree shift. And then I made a matching cowl to go with that. So this is the cowl. And of course, this yarn is just perfect for texture. I think it's the Pishkin yarn, and it's, I think, a Wyoming, Montana blend. And just awesome for that. And then this is probably one of my favorites too. This is the artifact shawl, which is a mosaic knit. So this is just when you knit with one strand at a time and just slip the stitches to create the pattern. And this is with Four Corners Fibers yarns, which is a mix of Navajo churro and merino wool. I think the merino wool comes from Cactus Hill Farms in Alamosa area. And it's just so like, it's just so, like, I love the result. Like I just, this, you know, these are actually arrowheads kind of, which is something that is a common find, you know, within ancient cultures. We have a lot of Anasazi culture around us. And then this is the Chiska cowl, again, inspired by, you know, my, I'm sorry, this is the Twin Lakes cowl. Sorry about that. By my grandma's land. You know, the colors, the blues, you know, that kind of design. So this is one of my first cowls that I really enjoyed working on. And then this is a recent design that I did for Sisters United in Montana. This is the Lost Sisters hat, and I did it in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women. A color work hat again, which was really fun. This is with Recollect. Let's see.
Recollect, is that a farmer's daughter?
Right. Yes. Farmer's Daughter Fiber. And then here's the little kid version. I made one for my son. So this is for fun. Yeah. So I think that's what I've got going on right now. Oh, and then this is the hat I showed earlier. This is the Jen and I collaborated for the Flagstaff Wool Festival in Arizona last year, which was virtual. And then these are rain clouds, you know, because we really, yeah. Yeah. So we, you know, had a lot of fun. We got together outside, you know, right. It was during COVID, right. And we were like sitting feet apart, and we were like drawing out ideas and like, you know, coming up with things. And then she designed a cowl, and then I did, you know, I designed the tam. And the idea, of course, you know, respecting and appreciating water, and, you know, this kind of flower on the top is kind of, you know, what results from rain, you know, when we get it. So yeah, so this was a fun collaboration that we had. So yeah, and I have a lot of stuff packed away, so because I had wool or moth infestation, and like, and it's under control, but I hide everything and I'll like pack it up and make sure nothing gets, you know, exposed. So I'm pretty, some of it's just kind of hidden away so it doesn't, you know, get chewed up. So yeah, so that's what I'm.
Fun. Your works in progress for coming out this fall, is there anything you can or want to share?
Well, yeah, so with so this is with Cactus Hill Farms. This is a hat that I'm doing, but this is actually just so I'm going to be doing a sweater. I actually have this, like I said, the sweater I may actually rip out. Just because it's not working the way I was hoping to. But this is, you know, this is really kind of a fun. The idea here is inlay jewelry, which actually not quite inlay, but some of it, you know, if you look at, you know, bracelets and stuff, you're going to have big chunks of the turquoise. This is kind of the Navajo style, which is what, you know, these are the big kind of the turquoise stones, and then the coral stones are another color. And that's the inspiration behind this design. So there's a sweater, a matching sweater coming out with this, in hopefully in the fall. I have to again get it worked working out. And I don't know if I could share I have a design going in with Hinterland Yarns, and I don't know if I can share that quite yet. I haven't had permission to do that. And then Pearl Soho, is also the other company that has one of my sweaters coming out, and they're actually almost finished. So I'm excited to share that someday too. And I don't have that design. That's in New York. So, so those are the main things I'm doing. I do have, an idea for another shawl that, with, knitted wit out of, Portland, Oregon. And so, so I'm kind of, trying not to get too much going at once. I try not to do that because that really stresses me out.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I love it. Laura with Balsam Knits said, beautiful color work and meaningful too. I love that in your designs. And earlier, somebody said they're so scared to make socks when you were showing your sock design. Do you have anything to tell them for encouragement?
Yeah, so I actually did this sock on, I used the 9-inch needles for this, which are the little short ones, to do the color work section, because I hate doing color work, magic loop, and I hate doing color work with double pointed needles. And Jen actually figured out that using 9-inch needles was a really great way to do small circumference knitting and color work. So I got a pair of these, just because I was curious to see what would happen. And I just started knitting. I actually had this pretty well done on my sweater, and I just wanted to see how it would look. And I just started knitting, and it just worked out to do, with those little 9-inch needles. And that made such a difference, to do that. And then once you get to the heel flap, it's just, you knit that flat and then just pick. It's way easier than you might think it is.
Yeah.
And Jen actually knit these socks too. She had never done socks before. And she just did it. And I think last summer, maybe I forget when she did it, but just zipped them out, made them in no time. So it's just a matter of just trying and just seeing. And I think it's a surprise, how you can actually get them. It's not as complex as you might think. I actually knit socks when I was stuck in Chicago one year with my husband. We were at a wedding and got snowed in, and we had nothing to do, so I made him drive me out to a Michael's, and I grabbed yarn and needles and just started trying, and then it they weren't perfect, but but it worked, and I was surprised, so that I just trying it actually made sense. And there's so many tutorials for for sock knitting online now, that you can really take advantage of today. So
yeah, I would say my recommendations are find a good pattern that has the heel written out clearly and then find tutorials. And just FYI, the person I always recommend for sock tutorials is Earth Tones Girl, because she has whole classes on her YouTube channel about socks. So if you're really, really intimidated and kind of want handheld through it, I recommend checking out her channel.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share? They said, thanks for the encouragement. I'll have to give it a try. Yes. Sounds good. Is there anything else you want to share about your work as a designer, or anything else you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask?
No, I feel like I haven't done this before. I've never actually had this kind of conversation on Instagram before. So thank you for reaching out. I'm always afraid, honestly, to do this. So so it's a good nudge to kind of branch out. I feel like I'm kind of more hesitant, to be so, I guess open about things with just kind of the Instagram, thing going on. So so I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about it. And it just kind of, it's been fun. It's been a fun journey. And so.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining. It's been a lot of fun. And I know it's something as knitters, we see a lot of designers' designs and stuff, but a lot of times we don't really get to know the designers real well. So I think it's a lot of fun to actually get to know the designers a little bit more, and personalities and interests and things like that. So thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate that for sure. So yeah.
Yes, it's always fun to have folks live actually chatting. Somebody just said you're extremely talented.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If you only caught part of the chat, the replay will be available. So it'll be up in a few minutes. But I think that's all for now. So have a beautiful weekend. I hope I'll talk to you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.